How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? This video is going to be a little bit different than what I usually do, and I just wanted to speak to the young men. Little background about myself. Many of you know me from my channel as this traditional Catholic podcaster, and you might be under the impression that this is how I've always lived. While I won't give too much personal details away about my upbringing and stuff, not to, discredit family members and stuff, I wasn't raised in a strong Catholic home at all. I saw divorce and moving around a lot and all that modern family chaos that everyone knows too well at this point. And I had to find my way towards this stable, perennial, traditional way of life on my own, basically. Of course, not on my own only, obviously God's grace in that, but a lot of searching and stuff. And I remember back when I was 23, 24 years old, and I was just married. And I was finishing school, and I was about to start my career as a teacher and all this kind of stuff. And this is before my wife and I had kids. We've got our 7th child on the way. Our oldest is 9 years old now. And by the way, I'm not as old as I look for those young Zoomer men out there. I'm 37. When I was 27, 28, I was teaching your generation as grade 10, 11, 12 students. I know a lot more about your way of life and the things you face than you might think. Even though I look like an old guy, I'm not one. Although I will be one day, God willing. And in any event, when I was freshly married, I was lost. Not in a way where I was spiraling or something, but interiorly, I wasn't a practicing Catholic. I was raised in a very liberal school system. I was starting to realize, hey, maybe all those powers that be aren't telling me the truth. I had a boss at a company I worked at. It was a moving company. I worked there for a couple of years during my last couple of years of school, part-time and then full-time in the summer. And it was a company that hired university athletes to move because we were athletes, so we'd be good at lifting and moving heavy things. And it was kind of the marketing shtick. Hey, we got these young varsity athletes coming to your house to move your stuff. That's a good deal. And it was great. Long hours in the truck with buddies, with bros. And those are always good times. I kind of miss those days in a way. But I had a boss, and he was a relative. I mean, at the time, he was probably 33, 34, about 10 years older than I was at the time. And he was a young businessman with a young family and stuff. And he was really, let's say, he was really willing to tell me about the JQ. A lot of you know what that means, the Jewish question. And this is before it was kosher, pun intended, to talk about things like Israel, Palestine, the way that you can talk about it today. I remember he was giving me books talking about the true history of Zionism and stuff. And I almost felt like I had to hide it when I was in the school library, between classes and whatever, reading this extra stuff because I was so fascinated by all this alternative information. But ultimately, it didn't turn out to be good. Not that the information was false, but I wasn't religious. And it was almost like too much too soon. I realized that so much of what we have been told were lies. All the things that everyone has gone through. Lots of people went through this during the COVID time and stuff. But I didn't have a religious center. So it just caused a lot of interior chaos. And I was freshly married and I was Catholic, but I hadn't been practicing almost ever in my life. I was just baptized, culturally, as many Catholics are. I was from an Italian background, but that's just normal. And my wife wanted to have children, and of course she did, and I wanted to as well, but I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I had all this information that was causing a lot of anger, basically resentment, a feeling of the feelings you get when you're realizing that things are not the way they're supposed to be. You realize your history classes in your school don't tell you the truth, and you realize that there's all these, powers that be that are planning this or that or whatever, you know, all the things you go through. And that combining with the fact that I was now in this position in my life where I had to like move forward and be a real grown-up, and I didn't have enough of a framework for that. By God's grace, I came back to the faith and got on the straight and narrow and whatnot. But I wish I would have had someone talking to me when I was like 23 or 24. I think I could have avoided a lot of the angst, I guess. Because when you're young, when you're in your early 20s especially, you want to get married, or you're trying to find someone to marry, or you don't know what to do with your degree, because what the heck are you going to do with a sociology degree or whatever? You get out of the sort of world of adolescence and childhood, really. And now you're expected to be an adult. And then when you get out there, you realize that it's nothing like you expected it to be, generally speaking. Your fancy degree is not going to make you a lot of money, for the most part. Certain degrees still do for certain trades and certain types of certifications, like engineers and stuff, sure, but you know, you got your bachelor's of arts or whatever, and it doesn't really mean anything. And every position is entry level. And then you realize there's all this politicking. You know, I wanted to be a firefighter at one point, and I was an athlete. I was very fit and could do the job. You know, the physical testing would have been a breeze. But it was, well, no, they're just hiring women for the force right now. And that was just openly said. And it's like, what? You don't even want to hire the people that would probably be the best at the job. You just want to follow this political correct stuff. And you guys are facing that. And the temptation, though, and this is kind of the real point I want to get to, the temptation is that you need to find somebody to blame. You know, it's these people, it's this group, it's these politicians, it's the feminists, it's the Zionists, it's the whatever, it's the whoever. And they're out to get people like me. And because of that, I can't get ahead in the world. And things are unfair. The thing is, there is a truth in that. Things are unfair. They've been unfair forever. And at certain periods in history, they're more or less unfair. Right now, we're in a period of history where things are, in many ways, for young people, pretty unfair. That being said, it's a very dangerous road to go down to get into the habit of trying to find people to blame for why your life is hard. Because the hard truth of the matter is that unless certain circumstances align that are very providentially in your favor, the way that you choose to respond to the obstacles that come your way is the most important thing. It's more important than the system. It's more important than the groups out to get you. It's more important than the guy behind the curtain. How you respond and how you choose to move forward is going to make a huge difference in the trajectory of your life. If you're 23, 24 years old right now, and it's like hard to find a wife, it's hard to find a good job, can't buy a house and so forth, there are 1,000,001 reasons why you could blame everyone for your problems. But the reality is that at the end of the day, that blame isn't going to do anything to help you. And what it's going to do to you is it's going to make you resentful. It's going to make you hopeless. And if you're a Catholic especially, what will end up happening is you will end up shipwrecking your faith. And the reason is because when you start to externalize the negative effects on your life onto other people, you stop taking responsibility for the fact that you yourself are the sinner. And when you do that, you look to everyone else in the world as the cause of your misfortune. And at that point, what's going to happen is a pursuit of a virtuous life is going to stop, or it's going to be severely stunted. And in this life, you can never stop pursuing virtue. You can't. I'm, as I said, 37, and I'm light years ahead of where I was when I was 24. But every single day, if I do an examination of conscience or whatever, and parenting my soon-to-be 7 children and dealing with all these things, if I stop moving forward and I stop pursuing virtue, trying to reform my habits and so forth, then I inevitably backslide. Now, in my case, and for married men especially, we're fortunate in the sense that there are so many people dependent on us, financially, emotionally, whatever, that there are a lot of built-in guardrails. It's very hard to backslide too far unless you really choose to be a jerk. But for young guys, you're single, it's hard to find a place to live, that's not your parents' house, whatever. You kind of have a lot of idle time and you don't really have any meaningful pursuits in many cases. It's very easy for vice to fill that void. This is why so many of you, and this isn't to pick on you, but this is true. So many of you are constantly going back to the confessional for the same sins. And everyone does that in a sense. Like every parent out there will tell you that whether they go to confession every month, every couple weeks, every 2 months, whatever it is, father has heard them say, "Oh, I lost my temper with my kids," That's normal. But those are more like involuntary habits or imperfections. But when you're a young man and you don't have these corrective responsibilities keeping you in the straight and narrow, basically, what ends up happening is you become this fertile breeding ground for vicious habits, which is going to include things like pornography. It's going to include things like promiscuity. Usually with men, it's going to be sins against the 6th and 9th commandment. And then in addition, because you don't have any real, because you gotta understand, a family is like a community, obviously you need friends and things like that, but if you have a family, you have your people. And even if you might be a little bored, you wish you could have more time for playing golf or something, if that's your thing, you have your kids, you have your wife, you have your dog, you have your business, all these things, and it fills up your time. You have meaning in all of your interactions in the day. But if you're just a young guy and you work some dead-end job, or you're finishing your master's because your bachelor's didn't do anything for you, or you're just playing video games all day or whatever, you then have to go find community. But for you young guys, you've been raised, and I feel bad for you about this. You guys were raised on social media, and that's really bad. I'm lucky that Facebook didn't even really become a thing till I was like 18 or 19, and it was just for university students. Twitter used to be 140 characters, and it wasn't really much of a thing. It was more of like celebrities and athletes posted messages or something. But you guys have been raised on Instagram, Snapchat, all these kinds of things. And I saw that with the students I was teaching, and it was weird. And so you guys go searching for all these communities, and you find them virtually. And the problem is that it's impossible to build any real community in the fullest sense on the internet. You can definitely build meaningful relationships that can become real human relationships. I have friends in real life that I've met through the internet for sure. But when you live on the internet and you don't have to escape, and you can't escape from it because it's basically your whole world, then your world becomes like a virtual world. And the problem with that is that when you detach from real reality and you live in virtual reality, whether that's always through messaging or always through social media or always through videos or Telegram or whatever it is, when that becomes the bulk of your existence, your muscles, like it's almost as if your muscles for dealing with real reality start to atrophy. So the life outside of the screen starts to become intimidating, anxiety causing, and almost chaotic. And you need to retreat into your screen world to find some sort of solace where things are exactly as you need them to be. But at the same time, that virtual world can get pretty boring real quick because it's like just scrolling and it's whatever. So you have to find ways to up your entertainment value, because if you're going to be spending all your time there, you better be entertained. And because you're a fallen human being and you're not married, it's hard for you to be chaste, all these kinds of things. It's just an obvious fact that you're going to fall into some places you don't want to be. And you're never going to escape from that unless you make the decision to get out. And in addition to the sinful side of things, like the real egregious stuff, it also atrophies and breaks down your ability to think. There's a lot of intelligent Zoomer influencers and theologians or apologists and stuff in some ways, but one of the things that's really become evident is that because you guys have been raised with really bad educations for the most part, as I was, but because you've been raised in this environment where you're always in this virtual reality, your ability to think in like a three-dimensional sense has been stymied by the environment that raised you. So, in addition to that, because the virtual world is so instant and the gratification is right away, and you can just listen to something for 10 seconds, turn it off, I don't like that guy, listen to that for 10 seconds, I don't like that, find something I like, and then just stick to that. And you can share your things in your Telegram groups of all the like-minded people and whatever. You stop being able to think fully. And then information that is contrary to what you believe starts to actually hurt when you have to try to understand it. So you have two options. On the one hand, you can say, this really hurts. I'm going to embrace this hurt because this is evidence that I need to grow. But that's really painful because you find all your meaning sharing information with everyone who agrees with you all the time. So what's going to happen if you start to not think like the herd that you're a part of? You're going to lose all your friends, which are virtual friends. So you can choose to embrace it and basically re-educate yourself and learn to think like an analog person, like a three-dimensional person, like a tactile person, or you can stay a digital person. But the problem is that without real human connection, without face-to-face, without real human community, you live in a world where there is no charity, because machines and ones and zeros don't have grace. So your way of communicating becomes more denigrated over time, to the point where you find yourself living in a way on the internet which is sinful and unhelpful, which is completely different than how you would hope to act if you were around real people. In order to escape this feedback loop, in order to escape this, well, fake universe that has become everything to you, it requires a lot of work. And as long as you stay in there, you're going to keep feeding yourself information that's going to keep blaming other people and every other group in the world for all of your problems. And the longer you're in that world, the harder it is to make a distinction between the real world and that digital world. And the more caricatured the problems become, to the point where you walk around in the world with all the flashing information, like if you have to leave your house and you actually have to go outside in nature, go to the bank and talk to somebody or something, you're now putting yourself in a situation where you believe that every person out there is basically the end result of some crazy headline you saw about the liberals or whatever on the internet. So you become even less able to go outside of your comfort zone and talk to human beings and have meaningful relationships. And it just keeps going. And what ends up happening is this trap becomes seemingly inescapable, because over time, with that atrophy of real human capabilities, real three-dimensional thinking, real conflict resolution, real charity, real grace with people, you despair that you don't have what it takes to live the meaningful life that you think has been stolen from you by all of these evil people that you hate on the internet. You have to find a way to reform how you view the world. And the first step is you're going to have to make the commitment to spending at least half as much time away from your screen as you do on it. Because if you did an inventory, you can check on your cell phone like your screen usage. And I bet you're at somewhere 8 or 9 hours a day, and it's not because of your job. That's insane. I know that's probably a lot to think about, but I'm hoping to continue doing some of these videos. Again, my intention is to maybe talk to some young men, but if you're not a young man and you found it useful, share it around. And if you are a young man and you did find this useful, let me know in the comments. If you didn't find it useful, you don't have to tell me that. You can if you want to, but it's not going to help anything. And if you want me to talk about things or answer any questions, maybe something I said seemed like it was helpful, or there's something you want me to expand on more, or you've got a dilemma, just put it in the comment section and I'll talk about it. Last thing I'll say is, although the picture I've painted might sound kind of dire in some ways, the good thing is that it's actually really easy to get out of. You just have to turn it off. So, all right. Talk to you soon.